And maybe they could schedule him on a bigger court, yes, but again, she's so young and she's just coming through, so the big courts with big names, it's difficult. It's not easy to manage that, but again, it's a good problem to have, to be honest.
The WTA is in full panic mode right now, and most people haven't even clocked why yet. 2 days ago at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, something happened during Alex Eala's scheduled practice session that tournament organizers have been quietly processing ever since. The attendance figures from that session are sitting uncomfortably close to, and in some cases exceeding, the gate numbers from marquee finals sessions at the same venue. A warm-up hitting session with 0 ranking points, no prize money, and nothing on the scoreboard. The stadium didn't just fill up, it went crazy. This isn't the first time either. Hundreds of fans formed queues 6 hours before her second-round match at Indian Wells. The Australian Open queue for her first-round match stretched back toward Rod Laver Arena, with hundreds physically turned away at the door. In Dubai, every single one of her matches sold out before the schedule was even confirmed. Tournament directors are now making scheduling decisions based on crowd data that the WTA's own ranking system has no category for. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this story gets considerably more complicated from here.
Well, she's being told X, Y, and Z, and I don't think get out of there.
Alex Eala has officially broken into the WTA top 40.
I do my best. I do what I can, and just if I see an opening, I think it's important that I go for it.
The WTA is in full panic mode right now, and most people haven't even clocked why yet. 2 days ago at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, something happened during Alex Eala's scheduled practice session that tournament organizers have been quietly processing ever since. The attendance figures from that session are sitting uncomfortably close to, and in some cases exceeding, the gate numbers from marquee finals sessions at the same venue. A warm-up hitting session with 0 ranking points, no prize money, and nothing on the scoreboard. The stadium didn't just fill up, it went crazy. This isn't the first time either. Hundreds of fans formed queues 6 hours before her second-round match at Indian Wells. The Australian Open queue for her first-round match stretched back toward Rod Laver Arena, with hundreds physically turned away at the door. In Dubai, every single one of her matches sold out before the schedule was even confirmed. Tournament directors are now making scheduling decisions based on crowd data that the WTA's own ranking system has no category for. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this story gets considerably more complicated from here. At Indian Wells earlier this month, the BNP Paribas Open posted a day-in-the-life video featuring Eala on their official YouTube channel. It became the single most-watched piece of content the tournament produced across the entire 2026 event, and it wasn't close. The tournament's own executive, Philippe Dor, told Front Office Sports, "We love every minute of it. We benefit from it. We promote it." That is a tournament director publicly acknowledging that one 31st ranked player is generating more engagement than every other piece of content they produced across a 2-week, 96-player draw. The pre-tournament press conference she gave ahead of the Australian Open pulled 196,000 YouTube views. Novak Djokovic's equivalent session got roughly half that. Carlos Alcaraz, the eventual men's champion, got less than a sixth of Eala's total. Aryna Sabalenka, the world #1 and a 2-time Melbourne champion, recorded 9,000 views for hers. These are not tennis-adjacent numbers. They belong in a different conversation about sports celebrity entirely. The practice court situation at Indian Wells deserves its own breakdown because it is the most visually concrete illustration of what is happening.
A perfect finish, really well-constructed point again. Left Baptiste guessing which way the last ball was going.
Tournaments are such great experiences for me, especially playing in front of the best crowd ever. And
I'm really happy to advance to the next round. Obviously, it's not in the way I wanted it.
Eala arrived at practice court 6 for her first training session of the tournament, hitting with Britain's Francesca Jones. She held a second session the same day with a lunch break in between. Fans packed the court area immediately, selfie sticks raised, people pressing against the fencing on adjacent courts, others sitting in neighboring court seats that were not designated for her session. After the second, session, fans chanted her name as she crossed the players' lawn toward the lounge. 3 courts over, Alexander Zverev and Taylor Fritz were simultaneously running their own practice sessions. Zverev is a former world number 2 and Grand Slam finalist. Fritz is a former Indian Wells champion, playing on his home soil in Southern California. Between the two of them, they drew a handful of spectators. The contrast was not subtle. It was documented, photographed, and widely circulated online within hours. The WTA ranking system does not have a mechanism for any of this. Court assignments are driven by seedings, which are driven by points, which are driven by results. What Eala has built exists entirely outside that architecture, and tournament directors are being forced to improvise around it in real time. James Blake made that improvisation official when he confirmed ahead of this week's Miami Open that Eala would receive automatic center court placement at Hard Rock Stadium. Not because of where she sits in the draw, but because her fan base has been creating crowd management problems at every venue she has visited this season. Blake was careful to frame it as a compliment, describing Miami as a cultural melting pot and saying her matches could feel like home fixtures. The practical reality underneath that framing is more straightforward. Putting her on a smaller court at this point is an operational liability. To understand why the crowds travel the way they do, the diaspora context is essential. Longtime Filipino sports journalist TJ Manotok put it directly to Front Office Sports. The country has been hungry for the next Manny Pacquiao. When he was at his peak, life stopped. When there's a fight, nothing's on the road, everyone's watching. Over 10 million Filipinos live outside the Philippines, with approximately 1.7 million in California alone. Miami has one of the most established Filipino communities in the United States. The geography of Eala's fan base is not coincidental. It maps almost exactly onto the locations of the tour's biggest events. When the WTA calendar hits Melbourne, Dubai, Indian Wells, or Miami, it is landing in cities with significant Filipino populations who already have the tickets, the flags, and the chants prepared before the draw is even released. Eala herself has been candid about how disorienting the scale of this support has become. Speaking to Front Office Sports after her Indian Wells debut win over Diana Yastremska, a match that finished just before midnight after a 2-hour, 43-minute battle, she said, "I did not expect this sort of fan base or crowd rallying behind me, but it's an incredible privilege to have. And it's not something your everyday person can experience, so I'm always so grateful." She also noted the effect was visible back home. "My friends will tell me that the courts are full. They're full at home." That last detail matters more than it initially sounds.
Of course, the atmosphere in each tournament has been amazing, and it's been a different start this year than any other year I've ever had. So
Alex Eala advances to the Dubai WTA 1000 quarterfinals. Sheila Salaysay has that story.
The WTA created the Philippine Women's Open in January 2026, the first professional women's tennis tournament ever held in the Philippines, specifically because of the commercial momentum Eala had generated. The final sold out before she had formally confirmed her attendance. A professional sports event in a country with essentially no previous WTA presence drew a sold-out crowd based on the possibility that its most famous player might show up. That is not a normal sports marketing outcome. The broader conversation inside tennis circles has now shifted from admiring the phenomenon to debating whether it has already made Eala the biggest commercial draw in women's tennis. Period. On the Nothing Major podcast, former world number 9 Sam Querrey asked former players Steve Johnson and John Isner directly, "Is Eala bigger right now than Sabalenka and Goff?" Johnson's response was immediate. "Yes, dude, it's crazy." He described her pulling the same effect on crowds that Juan Fonseca generated on the men's side at last year's Miami Open, courts packed to standing room only, entire sections of stadiums operating as de facto home crowd scenarios for a player ranked outside the top 30.
Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now?
Yes.
Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco?
Dude, it's crazy. She's having the same effect that Fonseca was having, like, on the men's side last year in Miami.
John Isner called her one of the hottest tickets on the WTA Tour right now, without her ranking being in the top 10. Speaking on Tennis Channel, Chris Eubanks went further when asked to compare Eala and Fonseca directly. "Yeah, I might say Alex. I think Alex might have him beat at this moment." Indian Wells tournament director Tommy Haas gave the assessment that probably carried the most weight, given he had just spent 2 weeks watching the numbers firsthand. He told Tennis Channel he had never seen the 16,000-seat Stadium 1 packed the way it was during Eala's matches. The record crowds. So many fans here over the weekend, every single day. It's been packed for players like Alex Eala, Juan Fonseca, seeing the Filipino fans, the Brazilian. Have you ever seen anything like that in terms of their commitment to those players? No. None of this has come without friction, and that friction is the part of the story that is still developing. The fan base that is filling stadiums and practice courts is, in significant part, new to professional tennis. The etiquette that experienced tennis audiences take for granted, silence during points, no cheering on opponent errors, respecting double fault moments, has been repeatedly violated at Eala's matches this season. At the Australian Open, spectators cheered Alicia Parks' double faults loudly enough that Parks admitted the atmosphere was very difficult and disrupted her first set almost entirely. At Dubai, during the third-round win over Sorana Cirstea, fans cheered Cirstea's missed first serves and unforced errors throughout the match. The Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championship's own match report described the atmosphere as Beatlemania reborn, which reads like a compliment, but Parks' description of what it felt like to be on the receiving end of it tells a different story. Ahead of the inaugural Philippine Women's Open, the tournament's Instagram account posted multiple educational explainer videos covering basic tennis rules and etiquette guidelines, including an explicit reminder to stay quiet during live points. The fact that a WTA tournament had to publish a How Tennis Works content series before its own event speaks to how new this audience actually is. The question the WTA has not yet answered publicly is what the long-term structure looks like if this continues. Eala is 20 years old. She reached the Miami Open semifinals last year, ranked 140th, beating 3 Grand Slam champions in the process. She enters this year's tournament ranked 29th, seeded 31st, with a first-round bye and a draw that could place her against Iga Swiatek as early as the round of 32. Her Instagram following is approaching 1 million, more than double the combined following of players like Jessica Pegula, Madison Keys, and Amanda Anisimova. Former world number 2 Greg Rusedski has publicly stated he believes she has the tools to reach the top 10. None of that trajectory bends downward from here. What happens to the crowd dynamic if she wins a Grand Slam? What happens to the scheduling logic if she reaches the world top 10 and the fan base doubles again? Query asked that question on the podcast almost rhetorically. I hope she becomes top 10 and wins a slam just to see how big the mania will get. The WTA does not currently have an answer to that question. It has a framework built around rankings, seedings, and historical attendance patterns. Eala's practice session at Hard Rock Stadium this week drew the kind of crowd that framework was never designed to produce. The stadium went crazy. Not for a final, not for a top 10 player defending a title, but for a 20-year-old from Quezon City hitting ground strokes in a warm-up session with nothing on the line. That is what panic looks like when a sports bureaucracy collides with something it genuinely did not anticipate. Her first match in Miami is days away. The bracket has Swiatek in her section. The center court is confirmed, and the practice courts have already told you everything you need to know about what comes next. If this channel is giving you angles on the Eala story that mainstream coverage isn't touching, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. Every match of this Miami draw is going to move this story forward, and you do not want to be 2 days behind when it does.